Welcome to this fun video where we are going to make our cursor be a simple arrow for the case of where you can click to walk, but when you get an enemy like the red block or this red enemy here, it's going to switch into a sword. And even more funny, as with his crazy walk, is that when we go off the edge of the scene, it will give a question mark wherever it doesn't know how to handle the cursor, so that we've got a debug case or a default case in there as well. So I'll see you in there. So first things first, I've got a red error here about this global namespace and cursor. So it says the namespace global already contains a definition for cursor. So let's deal with that straight away. The problem is our script that we previously just called cursor and is attached to our camera, we need to use a different name because we're going to be using Unity's namespace, Unity engine, has a class already called cursor in it. So we need to rename it. So this is how you rename a script in Unity 5. You firstly rename the script, just the file. I'm going to call it cursor affordance. I'll define what affordance is, etc. for you in a moment, but let's just rename it cursor affordance, A-F-F-O-R-D-A-N-C-E. So firstly, you rename the script. Then you go into the script itself and you need to just rename the class and resave. So that's what you need to do. It's a two-step process. So we rename up here, save that. If you go back to Unity, you should be able to play the game now with nothing more than perhaps a warning about something that's unused. Good. All right, so that's how you rename a script. Simple as that. Number one, change it in assets. Number two, change it over in the script itself. Pop that in the camera and UI folder, and then we have still have an old cursor script here actually for some reason, so I'm just going to delete that. So you just want to end up with a pure cursor avoidance script. Also check that that's the one that's on the camera arm. On the main camera itself, it's not, so you may need to reattach. There you go. So now your main camera has a cursor avoidance script. The camera arm has nothing on it, and if we want to just try this, we can click around and it works fine. Not that cursor affordance does anything yet, and that's what we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to do is to define what an affordance is and why we need it in the first place. So in your further reading, we have affordances, a link to Wikipedia. The bit that matters is an affordance is the possibility of an action on an object or environment. Or even more succinctly, it's just the possibility of an action. So what do I mean by that in terms of our game? Well, let's go take a look back in our game. Just get back to the slide so we can come back here later and just maximize that up. Okay, so over in the system, what I'm saying is that right now, if we play the game, we are able to click anywhere that has a walkable layer, like these blocks or the ground, but we tagged this cube with enemy, and if I click on it, nothing happens. It does say not moving to enemy in the console, but you need something before that. The player needs some affordance. They need to know that clicking here is going to lead to a different result to clicking out here. And that's what I mean by affordance. And what we're going to do is actually just change the cursor depending on the layer of the thing that we're currently raycasting to. So that's going to be fun. So in order to do that, the next step becomes we need to import our cursor artwork. So let's go into your downloads package that you've got for this section. Make sure you unzip it. And then let's into the camera and UI folder, put the target PSD, the unknown PSD, and the walk PSD. Okay, so there they are. Now, before you do anything else with these guys, you need to set them, highlight them, and set their texture type to cursor. And then apply. That's quite important. Texture type goes to cursor and then apply. And that sets a load of presets that make sure that the transparency works and everything else about it is working fine. So there we have our cursor artwork imported. Now, my general Windows cursor here, I want to swap out for this cursor artwork in the case that we're using mouse and keyboard control, which is what we're working on right now. So we need to start writing our cursor affordance script. So I'm going to reload all and just update what we're doing. And I'm going to introduce you to a new method in Unity, which is cursor.setCursor. It's in your further reading. This is why we couldn't use cursor, because cursor is a Unity engine namespaced method, or class rather. It's a Unity engine namespaced class. So because our script is saying using Unity engine, cursor would clash with our definition of cursor. All right, so what it does is you go cursor.setMode. It's a static method on cursor, on the cursor class, and you provide it a 2D texture and a cursor mode, or in the second signature, a 2D texture, a hotspot, and a cursor mode. And the hotspot allows you to offset the cursor. It determines which part of the cursor does the business, if you like. So in our case, it's going to be the top left of each of these cursors does the business. That's not going to work brilliantly on the question mark, but we're not really going to be using the question mark to operate in the world. It's a kind of error cursor for the moment for development. but the top left of the sword and the top left of the walk. So let's see how that's going to work. I'm going to do one of these for you, and then I'm going to challenge you to finish off the other three. So it'll be a relatively simple pattern matching exercise as a bit of a break for you in some respects. So because it is more, by using serialized field, we are doing something slightly more public than this private camera raycaster. I'm going to put it above. It's a texture 2D type. How do I know? That we need, because that's what it said in the documentation. It said that we bring in a texture 2D. So we're going to need to expose to the designer what is the walk cursor. So we just say walk cursor. Now, by being good programmers, we're going to initialize this to null. Why are we going to bother initializing it rather to null? Well, because it's going to be initialized to something anyway, and we might as well know what it is and be honest about what it is and be very clear that at this stage in the code, walk cursor has a null value. All right? Then they're honest. Now, we can get rid of this print line here. And what we can do, we keep this camera raycaster in. We're going to need it in a minute. The whole idea is that we're going to use it to change the cursor. But for now, let's just display one cursor. I'll do it in every update, because ultimately, what this whole method is going to be doing is every single frame, the cursor affordance is going to query the camera raycaster and say, hey, Mr. Camera Raycaster, you did a raycast this frame or last frame, and that's good enough. And what did you find out? What layer were you looking at? And then I'm going to set my cursor based on that. So it's nice and decoupled. Okay, so, sorry, I don't need to go there. I need to go back to cursor affordances, and I need to write the actual thing. So it's cursor dot. Now, you're welcome to do this as a challenge yourself. You don't really need me to see you through this bit, but you're going to get plenty of practice in a minute. Now, this hotspot, it's going to be called the cursor hotspot. Okay, and we'll make a variable for that in a minute. And then we need cursor mode dot. You generally use auto. You only use force software if you've got a particular reason to do with the hardware you're using that causes problem. Sometimes force software is good for debugging, but if you've got your cursor type selected properly as your texture type cursor, we shouldn't end up with any weird corrupted cursors. So cursor hotspot, what's that thing? Well, it's a vector 2D that is an offset. So let's serialize that field as well, so that other classes can't change it, but their designers can. Vector 2, cursor hotspot. Now we're going to initialize it as well to a new. We have to construct a new vector 2 struct, remember? And it's going to have a value of 96,96. How do I know 96,96? Well, that's just because that's the basic size of it's related to the size of these actual assets, which you can find out by clicking on them and then opening this up. They're 256 by 256, but I've just experimented with that off screen, and you're welcome to tweak these values and put your hotspot where you want it, depending on the design of your cursor. You can see how it affects. It's just the fine tuning of where you click. All right, so we've got a cursor hotspot. We've got all that. Let's try it. Let's run the game. Now, what happens? Absolutely nothing. Now, why not? I'm not going to tell you why not just for a second. Do you know why not? Probably guessed it, that if we look at the camera prefab on the main camera, we never set a texture for the walk cursor. Easiest just to do this straight on the prefab rather than on an instance of the camera, where you then have to remember to apply to the prefab. So think before you change things, am I going to apply this to all of these things, or do I want to just experiment on one? But for the moment, we're going to do it to all of these things, and so therefore I'm operating on the prefab, and I'm going to drag the walk cursor into the texture. Awesome. So the walk cursor here gone into the texture on the cursor avoidance script. Play that. Ah, wicked. So we have a walk cursor. That is really cool. So I want to challenge you guys to do something for yourself. Just going to get this slide back up properly for you so it looks pretty. And what I want you to do is finish the script quite predictably. Get all three cursors working. Don't worry about art style yet. Specifically, don't go off sideways trying to design an art style. Even if you're a brilliant artist and you're a brilliant artist who's super fast, it doesn't matter. We haven't committed to an art style from a design perspective yet with this game, so too early. So just get your basic three cursors working. They don't have to be ours. You can use your own placeholders, but don't get too committed to an art style. It could drag you in the wrong direction a bit too early. All right, so pause the video and just get your all three cursors working now. As a hint, if you want it, if you don't, just pause now. But if you want it as a hint, you probably want to use a switch statement just as rehearsal of a switch statement inside the update loop. Okay, Wickle Sticks. Wickle Sticks, how do you spell that? Let's see. I think it's Wickle Sticks, like that. Okay, so that's my way of saying wicked, which is another way of saying good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch based on the result of this camera raycaster layer hit. So we're going to say switch on. What are we going to switch on? The camera raycaster.layer hit, and then here's the syntax. So in one case, we're just going to set the cursor to the walk. So I might as well put that case in right now. And let's just sort the bracketing out straight away, like so. Almost like so. Okay, something like that. Awesome. Now let's say case. layer.walkable. Now, this is why I love using enums, because they just enumerate, they go through and list out all the things that are able, all the layers that are possible. Remember to use your break. Okay, cool. So that is one complete unit. In the case that the layer is walkable, go ahead and set the cursor to the walk cursor. Now, I would like to put the default state in straight away. I think that's a good habit with the return. And we need to decide how we handle the default case. I'm going to go debug.log error, because it is a bit of an error. It's a bit weird that we don't know what cursor to show. It would be a bit weird if some part of the world didn't at least give us a background layer that we can put the unknown cursor on. So I don't know if you worked out for yourself what cursor types of the 3 that we gave you should be applied to what layer. I didn't tell you that, so you're using your own initiative. So walk would be for the walkable. Unknown, I was going to suggest, is what we do when we get to a layer that is not in our list, and then target is going to be for enemy. So I've kind of let you assume that rather than holding your hand. Hopefully that's okay. So that's the default case. We would log an error. Now we've got a couple of other of these cases, this style here, where we just say layer, and it's not walkable. One of these is layer.raycast_end_stop. Well, do we have to be dealing with that? We could say unknown cursor. There's no harm in that. So, and in a minute we'll go to make a space for that variable. And then the other one is enemy, in which case we are going to use a target cursor. Okay. And then we really shouldn't get down here, should we? Why would we? So unknown cursor and target cursor. Let's make space for them by simply, the safest way is to copy the existing line that we know works twice. I'm going to put serialized fill on the same line. This is purely a style choice. I'm going to call one of them, if I can type, I'll copy unknown cursor. And I'm going to put the other one called target cursor. All these errors will go away in a moment. So there you go. We just declare 3 of these things, all initializing them to null. So they're fully defined at that point. Switch statement down there. Very simple logic, really. So I won't dwell on it too long. I'm only dwelling on it a little bit because at the point of recording, we don't cover switch statements, I don't think, anywhere else, certainly in the main Unity course, the complete Unity developer. So final thing, we need to go to the prefab. We need to drag in the unknown cursor. We need to drag in the target cursor. Then we need to play. So there you go. If I go over there you go. Look at that. Just as I move the top left of it over the block, or it's just about right, changes to a target. Now if I look at that funny run, Vic will love this dude running. Look at this crazy nutcase. But anyway, the way I'm doing that, by the way, is I'm both holding down the left mouse button to move and also using the keyboard. And the 2 inputs are adding up on top of each other, which we'll fix later. But don't just, by the way, pay lip service to that sort of thing. We'll fix later is fine, i.e. we don't need to fix it now. But what isn't fine is to say we'll fix it later and do nothing about it. So the fact we'll fix it later, we need to go find the script, which is going to be in player movement. Don't have to worry now about where this is going wrong, but somewhere, please do yourself the favor of saying to do, fix issue with click to move and WSAD conflicting and increasing speed. Right, enough information that when you come back to this later, you know what you're talking about. And we can do a search for to do, or Visual Studio has a task list option in it under view task list, and it shows you all the things you've annotated with to do. Okay, so always do something about your hunch that we should do something about this later. Don't rely on your human memory, however good it is. But basically what I wanted to show you on the edge of the world here is it changes properly to question mark. Awesome. So the only other thing we need to do is go to Rick's village and make sure that his enemies indeed switch over. Now they're not right now. I wonder why. Are his enemies tagged enemy? They're not. So next question is the enemy prefabs tagged enemy? No, mistake I made in the last video. So let's tag the enemy prefabs enemy. Not tag, sorry, layer. I'm taking you down. We need to make sure that the enemy prefabs are on an enemy layer. Layers and tags can be confusing. We used layers. Let's use layers. Okay, so now the prefab. So all these instances should have changed as well. Let's check this guy. Yes, he is on the enemy layer. So now if I hover over the enemy, it does indeed change. And in my scene as well, we should find that if I instantiate a new enemy prefab like this, and then go and hover the mouse over him, he also will work. Awesome. That's it. We have covered, I think, everything we need to cover in this video. I often forget to move this text file on, but that's okay. I'm still getting used to it. Hopefully you're finding it useful, the thing across the bottom of the screen. And I will see you in the next video.